Good evening. Well, as I take you on this last journey, I'd like you to leave behind everything you came with, everything you know to be true, and embark on a journey with me. Now, what I'm about to share with you is the story of my evolution as a person, but also my evolution as a human being with myself. So, are you ready for the journey? So growing up, I never really thought of differences, much less of them as a bad thing. To me, differences were the norm, and perhaps the only way to achieve excellence. Now, of course, we say we tend to align ourselves with individuals who share things in common with us. Makes sense. But it should be on a spiritual level rather than on a physical one. And at least it is for me. But growing up, this concept changed for me. At the young age of 7, my family and I moved to the United States of America, quite the journey, where I learned to read, write, and literally think for myself. There, I learned about the importance of thinking and creating thoughts of my own. The move was revolutionary to my character, to my beliefs, even to my manner of being, but simply because I went at such a young age. Now, it also meant that they made me aware of a number of different issues and things that weren't my issues to begin with. And you may all be sitting here today like, well, what's that? Well, it was during this time that America taught me about differences and their negative implications. Now, when I first arrived in America, my family and I moved into a predominantly white neighborhood in school. There, I was constantly told that I was different and taught how to deal with this difference. But that's just it. I had never thought of myself as different, much less of having a problem that I had to cope with. And you may be sitting here like, you were African in 1999 America. But it isn't that simple. Take a look at the image of these two boys, who you may have seen at the internet most recently. Now, they got the same haircut in an attempt to confuse their teacher. These boys thought that by simply having the same haircut, their teacher wouldn't be able to tell them apart. Now this, for me, is blissful ignorance. Interrupting this ignorance would have been to say, of course the teacher will tell you boys apart. Your complexions are different. Or even naming any other difference between them. But it was at that moment that their mother took to understanding that prejudice is something that is taught. And quoting her, she says, if this isn't proof that hate and prejudice is something that is taught, I don't know what is. So, in an attempt to take you on the journey with me, I went and Googled some images of what 1999 America thought of Africans in general. We all know that most of it was based on The Lion King and whatever other images of social media that were around at the time. Or even any campaigns that were around at the time, basically to help Africans. We know that. But this was my reality. Now, clearly, I wasn't very stylish. I know I had the polka dot pants, weren't very nice. But you can tell that I had the very same basic needs met as most Americans did. I had food, I had shelter, and I had clothes. But if you don't yet understand where I'm coming from, ask yourself this question. Would you tell a 5-year-old that Santa Claus is not real? Now, obviously, it sounds pretty straightforward. No. In essence, it's the same thing. We want our children to be naive and oblivious to certain realities. We try to preserve their innocence. We want them to believe in Santa Claus, and the image of Santa Claus should be right here, my sister and I. We want them to have imaginary friends and have imaginary tea parties. Because in essence, their innocence is the most important thing to us. In essence, taking away their innocence would be somewhat callous. So what I'm trying to say is that before arriving in America, I grew up in a Mozambique that was rich with cultural and ethnical differences. I was surrounded by different races and ethnicities. I just never acknowledged them as being different. To me, difference was the norm. In that aspect, I was blissful in ignorance. And it wasn't until I moved to the United States of America and had my differences pointed out that I started to feel inferior. The school and the students made sure to highlight my differences, basically, and their ignorance for that matter. They picked on me for the color of my skin. They picked on me for my hair. They picked on me for my lack of English-speaking proficiency. And they even picked on me for what they thought were new experiences for me in joining a modern-day society. Like entering a car for the first time, or watching TV for the first time, things that I had done my whole life. And moving on the journey that I wanted to take with you on. Imagine that as you're sitting here today, someone comes up to you and asks you, and fellas, please bear with me, but as women, someone comes up to you and says, listen, you're a woman, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I'm sorry it's a challenge, but I'm here to help you cope with it. And fellas, imagine the same thing if someone said that to you. Now, obviously, we're all adults. We all have critical thinking. We can simply brush off what they're saying. But I was 7. I was 7 years old, and I was hearing this systematically, every single day. So naturally, I began to question myself. I questioned my looks. I questioned myself. I questioned everything. And it was at that point in my life that my father played a pivotal role in my life. He worked tirelessly, perhaps unaware, to keep me from conforming to the norm. And that basically entailed just telling me every single day how special I was. It meant that he reminded me day in and day out that American reality wasn't my reality. And of course, I didn't understand it. All I wanted was to have my hair straight like all the other girls. But today I do, and for that I'll always be thankful. So, if America had never told me that I was different, and that because of it I was at a disadvantage, I would have never thought of myself as an inferior. I would have never thought of myself at a disadvantage. And this is the point when I started to notice the importance of information. And years later, my family and I moved to Vietnam. We're going back on that journey. And there, I had people taking unsolicited pictures of me, touching my baby brother, because they had never seen people so dark, putting it simply. And moving on, I went to Thailand. I went to study at Stanford International University. And on one of our trips, as we were moving from Bangkok to another province in Hua Hin, our car broke down. Now, we were about 10 people in this van, so we all had to get out and wait for the driver to fix the vehicle. And while we were there just waiting and chatting, our car pulls up. And a man comes off, and obviously, it was my first semester in Thailand, so I didn't speak Thai. But my friend was there, and she translated it to me. Basically, the man was requesting to purchase me. Yeah. He wanted to purchase me because he had never seen someone of a darker complexion than his own. And now, of course, my friend said that he meant it in the best of terms. But this is when I began to realize how fundamental information sharing is. So these differences in skin, in hair, in speech, they've all taught me the importance of information sharing, of self-love, and self-acceptance in order to help other people embrace differences as a good thing. Take it from me, your self-love and acceptance is your biggest weapon against any form of discrimination. And they come in all shapes and sizes. Don't take my own as the only source. Now, as a part of sharing information, I think one of the most important things is to actually show people. So to take away from that image of what Africa is, this is my reality. This is Mozambique. And this is the beautiful Mozambique. This is the place that I grew up in. Now, of course, it's evolved with time. But my role is to share information as it is today. So, Paul Hudson wrote in the Elite magazine that ignorance is bliss, knowledge is power, happiness is finding the balance between the two. Now, this was just the title, but it got to me. And I began to ask myself all sorts of questions. I mean, it's a beautiful sentence, but you start to wonder. And I started to ask myself all sorts of questions. Balance? Well, what's the balance? What's the scale for this balance? How much information is too much information? How much information is not enough? And most importantly, who should have the information? So, in an attempt to decipher this to myself, and I thought it was important to share with you, is that there's many different ways that we can perceive ignorance and information. And there's a very thin line between blissful ignorance and just plain ignorance. But although there's a broad spectrum of ways that we can approach this topic, today, with you, I want to share its importance with children. Children are the key to tomorrow, and our duties are with them. So, as adults, we're all able to think critically. We can make sound judgments. We can brush off a situation when someone tells us something that we just don't agree with. But as kids, we don't have the same capacity. Adults are able to tell right from wrong, and they're able to hold their tongues when something is not supposed to be said. But children just do as they're said. Children just do as they see. So it's important for us to share this very same important information with our children, with any one of them that surrounds us. A similar thing is happening right now in Mozambique. And I think by now we've gone back to Mozambique. So let's embark on that journey and imagine yourselves in Mozambique. It's a beautiful country. And while we're there, we have an organization named LaFamba, who basically fights for LGBT awareness and acceptance. Now, let me take you back to the beginning of the story. Mozambique has never been a country to prosecute anyone for homosexuality, not since its independence. We did have a law put in 1866, roughly, by the colonial powers, the Portuguese, back in the day, that basically meant they would punish anyone with hard labor who was guilty of homosexuality. But since our independence in 1975, we've simply never convicted anyone. But with the increase of campaign ads from LaFamba, with the aid of US aid, I've witnessed an increase of harmful jokes and harmful behavior towards the LGBT community. And of course, it's my perception. But I ask you this. We've never been known to target anyone for homosexuality. Why should we move in and attempt to solve a problem? Now, much like myself, Mozambique is a pretty young country. Like I said, 1975. And when I moved to the United States, I was 7. And in an attempt to perhaps avert a problem or solve a problem that neither Mozambique nor I had, we may be in the process of actually creating it. We need to let our minds open to the idea that not everyone shares the same troubles as we do, and we don't have to target different communities and different people because of it. We should just let things be. Let Mozambique grow at a sustainable pace, encounter its problems as it comes. And of course, many may argue that it's actually a good thing, fighting LGBT awareness and promoting. But who's to say for now? Zenaida Machado, a BBC analyst from Mozambique, said, and she puts it how I think precisely, is that while many may be relaxed about homosexuality in Mozambique, many see promoting gay rights as an attack on our cultural and religious practices. We have no problem with them. So let's not try to fix a problem that we don't have. Let's not clean the milk before it's even spilled. It's useless, unless you're actually hoping to spill the milk. So let's take a breath and try to understand what I'm trying to say, because it's a lot. My biggest weapon against discrimination, as I told you, is my self-love and acceptance. And it's been a journey since the first day that I moved to the United States. I've grown in all shapes and forms, and America has done great things for me. It's what has me standing here before you today. It's taught me confidence, but most importantly, it's taught me to love myself. And I want to share that with you guys today. With whatever it is in life you go through, look within yourselves. No one has the power to target you for something you don't accept. So in perhaps what is the oldest quote, or where it originated from, Thomas Gray wrote in a poem, 1746, "Where ignorance is bliss, it's folly to be wise. Let's preserve the innocence of our children. Let's keep them unaware of unnecessary realities. I can't say what would have been of my life if I hadn't gone through the things that I did, but we don't all have to go through the same things. So go home, love your families, look to your children, look to any child, and see them as a representation of tomorrow, because the person standing before you here today is a mere representation of yesterday." So to wrap this up, I want to leave you with a quote from a song from Whitney Houston, "The Greatest Love of All." And in it she says, "I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way, and show them all the beauty they possess inside. Now the rest of it, you guys can hear for yourselves. And as I leave you here today, I urge you to think of the following and to carry it with you everywhere you go. Ask yourselves this: how much information is too much information? And how can we keep it, how can we avoid it from taking away childhood innocence?" Thank you.